and welcome to LA Rams Central, episode number 96. We're nearing the monumental 100. I'm Anthony.
And I'm
Eric. And we're here to do kind of a unique thing today. So, we are going to cover each team in each division, what we think they're going to do, what you can look forward to. Some of you, that may be the draft next year, I'm sorry to say. And then, but that's okay. As a Ram fan, been there, done that. And then I'm going to end the show with some history. Eric will probably be out after that. Eric, we were asked earlier if you have Madden.
Right.
Do you have Madden?
I do not have Madden.
You're going to have to.
I haven't played Madden since it was good in 1994.
No. Well, you're going to have to get Madden so we could do the Rams and Bears as a fan requested. But about the only time the Rams ever beat the Bears, unfortunately, if you look at their records against each other. But anyway, so we're going to start with the AFC, and we're going to start with the AFC East, and I guess I'll take the lead. I actually, honestly don't know how. Okay, so I'm going to start by saying this because it really does irritate the living bejesus out of me. I am not one of those people that sits here and believes that if you have a quarterback and nothing else around you, that you're somehow the most unbeatable team in all of professional football. I don't think the Patriots have a good core around Tom Brady anymore. I don't think Tom Brady is as effective as he was 4 or 5 years ago. He's still a really good quarterback. I'm starting with New England for a reason. I'm still picking them to win the division because once again, the AFC has actually, I take that. Yeah. The AFC's kind of taken the AFC East has kind of taken a, we're going to wait for Tom Brady to retire approach, which really irritates me. Because nobody did that for the Rams when the Rams were doing great. They had to win 7 straight division titles the old-fashioned way. They had to earn it. But with each team getting better in the division. But putting that aside, that's not Brady's fault. Brady's still a great quarterback. Belichick is still a good coach. When you talk about the addition of Jason McCourty, one of the few talented players in Cleveland, when you talk about the free agent pickup of Jeremy Hill from Cincinnati, who I think is going to help, Trent Brown from San Francisco, which I think could have some effect, but mostly for me, it's Sony Michel and Isaiah Wynn that, for me, put the New England Patriots back in the front. So I am picking the Patriots to win the division. I'm actually going to do divisions, and I should be wearing a dunce cap because last year when I did this, I was miserable. But I'm going to do record anyway. I think the Patriots are probably looking at an 11-5 season only because I think that their division is going to be tougher to win. I do think that there is some really good talent in Buffalo, but nonetheless, there you have it. I'll do the East, Eric, and then I'll let you kind of go with yours. I'll be quicker here. With the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins, going back and forth on who I think is going to finish second. But A.J. McCarron is going to be the reason that my favorite quarterback in the AFC, second favorite quarterback in the AFC, my favorites, for those of you that don't know, Andy Dalton, Josh Allen won't see the field this year because I think A.J. McCarron is going to play that well. When you couple that with Ivory, that becomes a very important pickup because of all of the trouble that might be going on off the field with Shady McCoy, which all that seems pretty shady to me. But for me, it's the Star Latui free agent signing from Carolina at defensive tackle. It's Vontae Davis, the free agent cornerback from Indianapolis that not a lot of people talked about. It's the growth of the quarterback. It's the continuous growth of the quarterback position, I should say. It's the defense that carried Buffalo last year, and then they added a few weapons on offense, but really bulked up that defense. So for me, ultimately, I'm going with the Buffalo Bills. And I actually got the Bills making the wild card for a second year in a row at 10-6. They really impressed me last year. The Miami Dolphins, to me, will finish third, and it comes down, to me at least, the health of their quarterback, the addition at wide receiver, but I think that they lost a lot in Ndamukong Suh and some of their defensive front. And while I like some of their young guys that they picked up, I don't see Miami being able to win with just Kenyon Drake and an injured, recovering from injury quarterback in Tannehill. I got the Dolphins finishing 8-8, and then backing up the division in the 4 slot, I got the New York Jets, who I don't think actually improved all that much. I don't think that their quarterback, who will take the field this year, I don't think you win with a rookie right off the bat, and I think not signing Forte was a mistake. I know that he was old, but this team has got a lot of other issues that they needed to wake up on. And when Terrell Pryor is your number one free agent pickup in the offseason, some may argue that it was Avery Williams, or somebody might turn around and try to tell me Tremaine Johnson, but that guy gets burned by average to bad corners or wide receivers. So as far as I'm concerned, the Jets can have him. He's a spotty DB that doesn't show up in the big moments. I got the Jets finishing 4-12. Eric, that's my AFC East. What's yours?
Funny? I don't even know why I get into these predictions, because I swear my predictions are very close, similar to yours. There's a lot of uncertainty in the division. I'll give you that. Okay, and first we'll start with New England. No Brandon Cooks. Edelman is suspended the first 4 games. Who are you throwing to? If you keep throwing the ball to Gronk, he's just one catch away from getting injured. That thing can go for anybody, don't get me wrong, but it seems that Gronk finds a way to get injured, and I think that if he goes down, especially in those first 4 weeks, New England's in a heap of trouble. Now, the defense is still solid. They're actually getting back a couple of key contributors that they lost last year. I believe Hightower was lost for the year midway through the season. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're going to be a better defense. I'm curious to see what the offense is going to be like. Do they let Brady still throw, or do they finally turn to the run game and say, "Hey, Sony Michel, take the ball and run"? Because maybe it's a new wave in New England. Who knows? But I got them winning 10 or 11 games, so I could see them finishing 10-6 in the division. Second and third place is going to be a dogfight. How is Tannehill going to come back? Again, uncertainty down there in Miami. How is A.J. McCarron going to fare in Buffalo? Again, uncertainty there in Buffalo. And to me, I don't think that either team has the ability to make a run at the division this year. Give those guys another year, get Tannehill another year to get healthy, get McCarron another year under his belt, and then maybe we're talking 2019 where somebody finally overtakes New England. But I don't think that happens. And then again, for the Jets, they're going to be the division bottom feeders. When is Sam Darnold going to start? How many wins are the Jets going to have? The Jets will vie for the number 1 pick next year. They will win about 3 games.
Wow.
Now, they will not beat the Bears on October 28th. That I will guarantee right here, right now. But I just don't see the Jets doing anything capable of having any type of good season. They're still about 3-4 years away.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to your favorite division, your favorite AFC team at least. The Pittsburgh Steelers for me are a shell of their former selves. And they didn't do much in the offseason. Morgan Burnett from Green Bay, the safety, Jeff Bostic from Indianapolis, the linebacker. But they didn't need to do much because of what they have. And, they've got their quarterback for at least another year. I'm actually not impressed with Ben Roethlisberger. I think he's done, and I think he's playing a year longer than he should. But he's still got Le'Veon Bell. He's still got those wide receivers to throw to. And as long as the league is going to call ticky-tack penalties against top-notch wide receivers for the big play, Pittsburgh's always going to have that advantage. Not to mention the fact that the Steelers have one other tremendous advantage over anybody else. They're allowed to hit you illegally. They're allowed to take cheap shots on your football team, and nothing happens to them. But boy, when it happens the other way, do they benefit from penalties. Don't believe me? Ask the Cincinnati Bengals, who returned the favor to the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. And although I don't condone what happened to Shazier, and I think it's unfortunate, and my heart goes out to him and his family, when you...
They did not hit Shazier. Shazier tackled wrong. What are you talking
Okay,
about?
who's the one that they hit that they put out?
That was like Heinz. Wasn't that Antonio Brown a couple years ago?
Yeah. So I'm a little, but you remember the
Devontae's perfect on Antonio Brown.
yeah. So I don't. Why was I thinking? Oh, because Shazier got hurt last year on the tackle. I'm sorry. That was in the Bengals game though. So I just think for me, the division is catching up to Pittsburgh rapidly, but I don't think they're catching up enough. When you've got the weapons the Steelers have on offense, when you've got the defensive speed that the Steelers have in the division they're in, and that's their biggest advantage. Other than the Cincinnati Bengals, you don't have anybody in that division that's even worth your time. They're going to sweep Cleveland, they're going to sweep Baltimore, and they're going to win at least one game against Cincinnati. That's 5 wins right there. I got the Steelers going 12-4 and getting a first-round bye, potentially. But to me, it kind of begins and ends there. The team that I'm excited to see, and the wild card I think is going to come down to 3 teams. And I'm actually right now not picking the Bengals to have that wild card spot. But when you look at Cincinnati's additions, they're not really extremely great. Bobby Hart on the offensive line, they lost some guys on their offensive line. Cordy Glenn from Buffalo was another lineman that they picked up when they lost some more. But I think Andy Dalton's due for what's the word I'm looking for? A bounce back year, and I think that Joe Mixon is finally going to get his shot in Cincinnati. I actually have the Bengals finishing second in the division at 10-6. It's not enough to make the playoffs, but it's enough to kind of scare some people. Now, for me, Baltimore took a huge dump this offseason. Michael Crabtree is a good wide receiver. That'll help offensively, but they didn't address anything really that they needed on defense. If you look at their picks, Robert Griffin III, John Brown, Willie Snead, Michael Crabtree, and then they have the biggest bust in the draft. They picked up Lamar Jackson. I just don't think, and then their tight ends can't stay healthy or stay on the field. They put so much in on their offense, forgetting that their defense is aging and taking steps back. I got the Ravens finishing 7-9, but and unfortunately, if you're a fan of the John Harbaugh, you're probably in luck because he might be coming to a team near you soon, because I think this will be his final year. And then lastly, the Cleveland Browns. We talked about their draft. We talked about their players. I'm excited. I do think that they're getting better. I just have absolutely zero confidence in Hugh Jackson as a head football coach. The man has done nothing in every stint that he's had. He doesn't know how to manage players. The front office has shown that they don't know how to get the right players to fit whatever system's being run. I got the Browns rounding out the back end. You can't do worse than last year. I got them going 3-13. Don't ask me who those 3 wins are against. I don't know. They could be 1-15. God forbid I say it, but maybe even 0-16 again this year. There seems to be too much talent for that this go around with the wide receivers, with the offense, or with the with the defense. But once again, they have one glaring problem, and it's the same problem that they've had in Cleveland since 1999. And no, it's not the quarterback. They don't have linemen that can block. They don't. They don't have tackles. Now that Joe Thomas is gone, they have no tackles. They had a tackle, and that wasn't good enough. You can't have a tackle, then crap, and go, we got ourselves an offensive line. You got yourselves the offensive line that the Rams tracked out there every year from 96 to 98. And ain't going to win you football games. So they're 3-13 and maybe 0-16, but I think they're talented enough to win 3 games. Your go.
Well, to me, Pittsburgh is still class of the division. They're going to take it. I think their time is starting to run out, kind of like New England's. I think you're going to start seeing new teams take over divisions next year. Pittsburgh's last year with Le'Veon Bell. I know Antonio Brown's contract runs out after 2019. So, who knows what they're going to do and what they're going to look like. And if that happens, it probably is I could see Roethlisberger finally hanging up his cleats. As far as anybody else, obviously I got Pittsburgh winning the division. I like the 12-4 record that you threw out there. I can see them going also 11-5. The defense isn't as strong as it used to be. We saw that twice last year against Jacksonville when they went into Pittsburgh and just stomped all over pretty much. So I know they're hurting there. I know they tried to draft some defensive players as well we'll see how those guys fit in the holes in the system. As far as second, third, and fourth go, I got the Browns obviously at the bottom yet again. I can't see them going 0-16. The only way I think that happens is if Tyrod Taylor gets injured in the first couple of weeks after they lost a couple of games, and they turn to Baker Mayfield, and he's got the rookie woes and whatnot. But again, that's hard to see, and you don't want to see injuries happen at players like that. But Tyrod Taylor went there for a reason, and basically to be the Ryan Fitzpatrick of the Browns, if you kind of get my saying there.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as second and third go, you could say who it's going to be between Baltimore and Cincinnati. They both could end up 8-8. They both could be 9-7, 7-9. They're mediocre. I like the Ravens a little bit more than the Bengals, actually, only because I think Michael Crabtree's in due for a big year. I think he wants to prove the naysayers out in Oakland wrong, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has good chemistry with Joe Flacco. So can't really say what the record's going to be. I'll give them both 500 records and the Browns to win about 3 games. But again, it's Pittsburgh and everybody else in that division. Just like in the East, it's New England and everybody else.
Although I think the gap is tightening in New England, but not as much in Pittsburgh. Dude, I got to tell you, I don't think there's going to be a better division to watch in the AFC than the AFC South. Now, you're going to think I'm crazy. I don't have a single team in this division, provided Andrew Luck comes back from injury, going worse than 500. I got the Jaguars winning the division at 12-4. I think the addition of Niles Paul and Jenkins are going to help not only the passing game, but the running game, which I think the running game with Fournette is going to be phenomenal. I do believe that Blake Bortles turned a corner. I used my 3-year window, and Blake Bortles proved why patience for a quarterback pays off in the long run, and quit putting a round peg in a square hole and then getting pissed off that it doesn't fit. Let it happen. And they did in Jacksonville. Credit to the organization. Credit to their players. I love the Taven Bryan draft pick. I think that's going to help their defense, which was already stout. You've got the Andrew Norwell pickup, which is going to definitely help their offensive line, opening up more holes. I look at the Jaguars' schedule. I'm excited for them. I got them going 12-4. Now, also in the division at 12-4, winning the wild card spot by a long shot is going to be the Houston Texans. All of that talent returns from injury. For Houston, 12-4 or 4-12, it just depends on if they can stay healthy. That is a big, 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 big factor in Houston. But Watson is going to learn how to play in the pocket and move around the pocket. Think Randall Cunningham, Minnesota Vikings, 1998 type of pocket presence. Developing. Not going to be there this year, but developing. Then you've got their defense. We already know about their offensive weapons. But to me, when you add Tyrann Mathieu, when you add Zach Fulton, when you add Henderson, when you add Colvin, the cornerback from Jacksonville, who comes with some postseason experience, and then you add the Justin Reed draft pick from Stanford, it's a nice fit for what they're running. I got the Texans run away with it. But now I kind of want to flip gears here, because I don't think that the Tennessee Titans, I think their step back is going to mostly be because of their coach. I'm sorry, but you could just tell listening to him talk that he thinks he's the smartest man in the room. And the difference between Sean McVay and Eric, I'll even say Nagy, because I've heard him talk a few times in interviews. What I liked about McVay and what I like about Nagy is they're not wide-eyed, too scared for the job, but they also know that they need smart people around them to help them with the things that they don't know. The problem that I have with the Titans coach, who was their defense coordinator last year, is Mike Vrabel thinks he's the smartest man in the room because he's a former Patriot. He's got that Patriot arrogance, which doesn't work well when you're on a team starting your own organization. Belichick didn't act like he was the smartest man in the room. He knew he was, but he didn't act like it. He brought in people like Nick Saban when he was in Cleveland and the team that he put together in New England. He always surrounded himself with good coaches, and I didn't like a lot of the people that came into Tennessee this year. But that all being said, they still have talent on offense. They still have some good weapons. It's basically New England South because they brought in two Patriots, two big-name Patriots in Dion Lewis and Malcolm Butler, which I think will help them, but I think they'll go 8-8 because of it. I'm really looking forward to Rashaan Evans and what he's going to do. For me, the Indianapolis thing is curious, and I'm sure you're probably going, dude, you're out of your mind. There's no way they're 500. I agree unless their quarterback stays healthy. I love the Quentin Nelson draft pick. I love the Braden Smith draft pick, which will keep their quarterback upright. They've got weapons. Their running game is going to be curious, but I'll tell you who I'm looking at is Christian Michael, the 6-year back out of Texas A&M, and Matt Jones. I don't know if either one of these guys will start, but they're certainly capable of coming in and helping. We know in today's football, you don't need a Todd Gurley to win 8 games. So as long as those receivers do what they're supposed to do, and don't forget the Matt Slauson addition on the offensive line from San Diego, this is going to be an improved football team, but I think 8-8 is going to be their top, where they top out. Your turn.
Well, you got the order correct. Jacksonville, they're going to be so fun to watch. I can't wait. I mean, I can't wait till they're the London Jaguars.
Oh, Jesus. You went there. You went there.
So, I told you last year, 5 years. So 4 years from now, they'll be in London full time. Jacksonville has only gotten better. And I know that they did all last year without Allen Robinson outside of like the first series of week 1. They're not going to miss him. They did as well as they did, even with Fournette missing a couple of games. And I think Fournette's learned, hey, this is the NFL. I got to put on some muscle. Let's build up so I can play all 16. And that's where the tiebreaker comes in when they beat the Texans by 1 game.
Okay.
And they both finish. I'm sorry, they don't both finish, but the Jacksonville Jaguars go 13-3, and the Houston Texans go 12-4. You're going to see brand new football in Houston this year. You're going to see 16 healthy games out of J.J. Watt, 16 healthy games out of Deshaun Watson. And I'm telling you guys right now, watch as many Texans games as you can, because Deshaun Watson is the real deal. I want to trade for him right now. I am that confident in Deshaun Watson. Coupled with the outside receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, and Will Fuller, who's actually also going to stay healthy all year. Man, I'm making bold predictions left and right here.
Yeah, you are.
But I love this Texans team. You know, Clowney's coming up on a contract year. You know he's going to have a good year. I'm not going all in on the 16 games with him, but he's gonna provide monster stats along with J.J. Watt, and J.J. Watt has a lot to prove. The Houston Texans take on the first wild card. The Tennessee Titans are a surprise team. I like them also being about 10-6 as well. This division is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun to watch all year. I think Mariota takes a huge step forward. He has a lot better passing game around him this year. He's got even though he's got a defensive head coach, that defense is stingy. Tennessee's not going to be fun to play. Especially if you play a hard-nosed football game the week before, they will take it out on you. I do like the addition of Dion Lewis, like you mentioned. He's going to be a great third down back and also a great back catching out the backfield. But Derrick Henry is going to be your workhorse, and workhorse he will be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know you have the Colts at 8-8, but you don't know what you're getting out of Luck. But I think the biggest year out of any Indianapolis Colts this year is going to be their tight end, Jack Doyle. And I think that because Luck, I think that he's going to be a little timid while he throws the ball, and he's going to want to find somebody who's not going deep like T.Y. Hilton. but he wants to get the ball over the middle and move the chains.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the Colts go 6-10.
Well,
they're still a decent team. Their defense needs a little work, but I think you give Luck one more year. You let the Jaguars and the Texans and Titans have the spotlight. You sit back, you wait your turn, because Indianapolis Colts' turn is coming if Luck stays healthy. That are the 4 words that you need to hear all season. If Luck stays healthy. Mark my words. The Colts will be back. Just won't be this year. They can't. I don't see them making that big of a jump from where they were last year, and I know what quarterbacks that they had on their team last year. They were god-awful. I don't think Luck's that kind of quarterback to turn them around in one season, especially coming off shoulder surgery. So this is why I have the Colts going 6-10.
Oof. Okay. Well, we do disagree there, but that's okay. We got the order right, like you said. Forever, I just want you to know that outside of the Patriots and the 49ers, I don't think I hate a team more than I hate the Chargers. Okay? I want to make that abundantly clear for anyone listening. Go home. You don't belong here. I hate the Chargers. That being said, I think the Mike Pouncey pickup is going to be for San Diego what Whitworth was to the LA Rams. I've got the records close, but let me explain to you how this breaks down. The Chargers win the West, and it's not even close. They may be 11-2 and have the division wrapped up and then lose the last 2 games, or 11-3. Either way, they're going to sweep the Raiders, which is going to make the fact that the Raiders are number 2 in the division not a factor. When you look at what they drafted last year, which I'm still going to call my Rams offensive line, forget you, forever. I hate that. It drove me crazy 2 years ago. But then you add Pouncey, who I think is the best center in football, period. Period. You can have whoever else you want. Give me Mike Pouncey. Everywhere this guy goes, he leads an offensive line or a football team to the playoffs. I know Miami didn't make it last year, but they did his first year. Now he's in San Diego. You add the Derwin James pickup. You add what they already have at wide receiver. Their quarterback is outstanding, even though he's up there in age. Their running game is good. Their defense is solid. I actually think 11-5 may be undercutting what San Diego could finish. This could be a 13-3, 14-2 football team if the pieces come together early and often. I think that it's going to be a little bit rocky when they take on, I believe they take on the South. Let me not talk out of my rear end. No, they take on the North. So I think things will get a little bit rocky because they play the West and the North this year, the NFC West and the AFC North. But still 11-5, I got them winning the division. The Oakland Raiders, just because I'm not a fan of the other 2 teams, I think the Raiders are going to steal wins from both of those teams. And I got the Raiders going 10-6. Denver is to me not a great team, but I think they're a proven team. I think they have enough veterans. I think the addition of Sua Cravens is enough to get them an extra win over Kansas City. And I got the Broncos going 7-9 with the Kansas City Chiefs rounding out the division at 6-10 because I know what Watkins can't do or can do. I know that Kareem Hunt can't carry the load for an entire season. I know that their defense has been decimated this offseason in free agency. I know they're getting Barry back, but come on. You got Mahomes as your starting quarterback this year, who's basically a rookie. No matter how talented, I got the Chargers going, or the Chiefs going 6-10. You.
Exactly. Picks up this night. All right. So here's what I see happening. I'm surprised you're that high in the Chargers.
I am.
So I actually think Case Keenum's the real deal in Denver. And
wow.
I have Denver winning the division. That defense is sick.
It's old and it's decimated, but okay.
Von Miller's still there. They have Bradley Chubb. They're going to wreak havoc on AFC West. quarterbacks, and Phillip Rivers isn't the most mobile quarterback out there. Pat Mahomes is he's still technically a rookie in my book because he only played one game last year. I know it's his second year, and we know Derek Carr can throw the pick just like as any of the best of them can do. I have the Broncos winning the AFC West with an 11-5 record. I think Thomas and Sanders are going to have big bounce back years. Coming in second place, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are the surprise team in the AFC. I actually think they win the second wild card. For the Chiefs, Pat Mahomes is going to be a difference maker, and Travis Kelce is going to love every minute of it like Alex Smith never left. For the Chiefs, they're getting a little up there in years on defense. Eric Berry might be seeing his last couple of years there, but I still think they have one more run in them, and that brings me up to the Chargers. Chargers always have a tough time playing in Denver. They always have a tough time playing in Kansas City. It's like their own kryptonite. This is why I don't see the Chargers getting no higher than third. They have a great team. The loss of Hunter Henry is going to be felt. So they're talking about re-signing Antonio Gates, all 38 years old of him. And for last place, I have the Oakland Raiders. Yes, you heard that correctly. I think John Gruden's message is not going to get across. He's tried to reach out to Khalil Mack twice, and they haven't been able to connect. To read into that what you will, it might be something and maybe nothing. However, 10 years and however many millions they gave him, I want to say it's like a 10-year, $10 million a year contract. I don't see things working out well in Oakland this time around. This is why Oakland comes up last in the division. That's my AFC West.
We couldn't disagree more on that if we wanted to. But okay. All right, well, let me do my playoffs really quick in the AFC. Wild card round. Hold on a minute. I'm going to have to mute you. Oh, that just mutes me. Okay. The way I have the playoffs breaking down is I have the Chargers as the 4 seed. I have New England as the 3 seed. So I've got Buffalo going to San Diego, and I have the Chargers beating the Bills in the first round of the playoffs in the wild card. I got Houston going to New England and pulling the upset and effectively ending the Belichick era in New England and the Brady era as the Texans end up beating the Patriots in Foxborough to go on to the divisional playoff round. There I've got San Diego going to Pittsburgh. And the Chargers historically have always done well in San Diego or in Pittsburgh in the postseason. And I don't think this is going to be any different. I think the Steelers still have the holes that they have. And I got the Chargers beating the Pittsburgh Steelers and going to the conference championship game. Unfortunately, this is how high I am on the Chargers. Okay. Then I've got Houston going to Jacksonville in what I think is going to be just a fun game to watch between two of the best football teams in the AFC. What should be the championship game, but won't just because of the way they broke down in the standings and the seedings. I got Jacksonville beating Houston and going to the championship game. San Diego at Jacksonville is going to be a low-scoring defensive game, which gives the advantage to Jacksonville. I got the Chargers losing, and the Jags, I can't believe I'm saying this, going to the Super Bowl. Now, I want to put a clarification in here. New England or Pittsburgh very easily could be the representative in the AFC. I'm not saying that they can't, and I'm not saying that they won't. I'm just saying that if their weaknesses are exploited, those matchups could be their undoing. But that's my postseason prediction for the AFC. Go.
Okay, well, I have Jacksonville as the 1 seed, Pittsburgh as a 2 seed, New England is a 3 seed, and Denver is the 4 seed. The 2 wild cards are Houston and Kansas City. So Kansas City goes to New England. Not a good start for the Chiefs. New England beats the Chiefs, and then Houston goes to Denver. It's going to be a tough game in Denver only because Mile High Stadium. I think a lot of teams. I don't know. There's something about the altitude. I don't know if it's really that true for a lot of teams or not. Hard to say. I don't play up there, so I can't. I don't want to speak for them. But you see the Houston Texans prevail over the Denver Broncos. And then Houston goes to Jacksonville. I think you had that matchup as well, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And New England goes to Pittsburgh. Shocking. Wow. I mean, let's have that game on every year, why don't we?
Yep.
So Pittsburgh beats New England. Jacksonville beats Houston. And Jacksonville goes to the Super Bowl.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
We got the same.
This time Jacksonville gets a nice January vacation down to sunny Jacksonville, Florida, where it's probably still only about 40 degrees, but it's a lot better than the 6 inches of snow in Pittsburgh that's falling when it's game time.
Yeah.
But hey, it's a new. Jacksonville was 1 play away last year from going to the Super Bowl, and I think they're really close. They just couldn't get that 1 play they needed, and that's why I think that they beat Pittsburgh and go to the Super Bowl this year.
That'd be a fun championship game, that's for sure. An old AFC Central matchup. Normally, I don't get on the bandwagon of the team that won the Super Bowl the year before, but when you add Michael Bennett, when you add Elodie Nada to your defense, which was already, in my opinion, the best in football, and then you turn around and you add a wide receiver in Mike Wallace, who I think was underutilized in Baltimore, and you know what you have in Nick Foles, and yes, I think Carson Wentz is going to start, and yes, I think Carson Wentz is going to be just fine. I've got the Philadelphia Eagles winning their division at 13-3, and trust me, the NFC East is going to be just as exciting as the AFC South. I got Philadelphia winning that division at 13-3. It'll be comfortable. It's going to come down for them. The 1 seed is going to come down to the final week of the regular season, which they're going to be hoping for a 49er repeat of last year and not get it. So I got Philly as the 2 seed, wrapping up with a first round bye, but they're a 2 seed, not a 3 seed, at 13-3. I got the Dallas Cowboys winning the first wild card spot as the 5th seed with an 11-5 record because, yes, ladies and gentlemen, Ezekiel Elliott makes that much of a difference. The New York Giants, you are about to see why the running back position cannot be understated. I believe that the Dallas Cowboys will finish 11-5 only because they sweep the Giants this year. But the New York Giants, because of Saquon Barkley, because of some additions they made on defense, and no bigger acquisition than Alec Ogletree shoring up the middle, I got the New York Giants winning the 2nd wild card spot at 10-6, and my poor Washington Redskins are going to be reduced to a whimper. I got them going 4-12 and out of the playoffs probably by week 7, and it'll also be the end of head coach Gruden number 2. Your turn.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Listen, you mentioned it was the Eagles, and I think it goes very unnoticed. And with the Eagles picking up Elodie Nada. Now, if you guys don't watch back during any part of last season, I mentioned this in any of the recaps and any times I talked about the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are number 1 in run defense when Elodie Nada was on the field. He went out after week 4 when Detroit was number 1 against the run, and they dropped like a rock in water all the way down to the high 20s. Well, I want to say like 28, 29. He is that much of a difference maker. I would not want to play Philly this year. They are on a quest to go to back-to-back Super Bowls and possibly win them. Well, we almost had the Super Bowl last year of what it could be this year if Philadelphia gets back.
Yeah.
Which would have been a better defensive matchup, in my opinion, than what we had this past year. I swear, I ask myself why I do this show with you because we're pretty much on the same wavelength, but I see that 13-3 mark as well. Maybe 12-4 if there's a hiccup somewhere. The interesting thing, and I'm going to go back to the Houston Texans here because Deshaun Watson had a torn ACL. Carson Wentz had a torn ACL. Carson Wentz actually suffered his torn ACL a little bit later than Deshaun Watson. Both of them missed the PUP list starting in training camp this year.
That's
which
awesome.
is huge.
Yeah.
Because
awesome.
now they can start practicing with their team right away. So Carson Wentz getting that, and they've already said that they're only going to do non-contract drills with Wentz and 7-on-7 drills with him. So they're easing them in, all while they keep Foles pretty much ready in case he's ever needed again. And Philly now has all the confidence in the world to go to him whenever they need to. So I do like the Eagles coming out of the NFC East. You know, to me, the rest of the division is really who's second best.
Yeah.
And if you're not first, you're last.
Jeez, we're going to go with that.
I hate to agree with you on the Cowboys, but a whole year of Ezekiel Elliott's going to make a big difference. I don't know how much the loss of Dez Bryant's going to make, because I don't see a huge need in wide receiver. They lost Dez Bryant. Jason Witten retired. I don't know who Dak Prescott's going to throw the ball to. I mean, Terrence Williams is one, Cole Beasley is another, but I'm sorry, but if you have any two type of cornerbacks who know how to play cornerback, they're going to be able to shut those guys down.
Okay.
And the Cowboys are going to resemble an old school 80s football team that runs the ball and runs the ball down your throat. Now, with Dak Prescott getting another year under his belt, what I think you're going to see is a lot more bootlegs. And that's the only way that I see Dallas staying in a lot of games, and for some reason, it's going to work for them. Coming up in third are the New York Giants. Eli's looking for one last swan song before he hangs him up at 37 years old. I'm not saying he's hanging him up after this year, but it's going to be in the next 2 to 3 years. And what they did to Eli in New York last year, he's going to come out and he's going to prove that last year was a fluke. What I'm trying to get at is the Giants are going to start out blazing. Okay? They're gonna cool off a little bit some, and then they're gonna regain their form. But I think it's not enough to overcome Dallas. So I see Dallas going 9-7, and the Giants being 8-8, one game behind Dallas, and then the Redskins come up. You know, the Redskins are a wild card. I'm not saying they're making a wild card because they're coming in last place, but the Redskins are a wild card to me only because if they get a full season, which they probably won't, out of Jordan Reed, that team can make some noise and actually jump both the other two teams in front of them, in my opinion. They got some decent wide receivers. I think you're going to see a lot of big years in Josh Doctson, but it's not going to be enough. I mean, obviously you need to be able to stop the ball, and I don't think Washington's defense is going to do enough of that. Now, is Gruden going to be gone after this year? I don't know. That's a good question. I know you mentioned that, bye-bye Gruden number 2. I can see Washington finishing up at 7-9, but they're hard to predict because Alex Smith is a good quarterback. I don't want to see him finish his career like this. I know he's got another 4 or 5 years on his contract as he re-upped with Washington after they traded for him, but I don't want to see him go out like that. He's too good of a quarterback, and I could see this wearing him down.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, in the NFC North, I think we're going to have some differences. I only got one team making the playoffs out of the NFC North, and that's the Minnesota Vikings at 12-4. I think that their schedule early, they're going to get off to a hot start, maybe 4-0, maybe even 5-0 if they can find a way to beat Philly, which I don't think is going to happen. But they'll definitely be 5-1, 6-1 going into the Saint game in Week 8. Like you said about the Giants cooling off, I think there will be a cooling off period, but it'll be more towards the end of the season where they might win. They could theoretically lose to Miami and Detroit, but then beat Chicago to finish 12-4 to avoid that 11-5 finish, which would tie them with the team that I have winning the NFC South. But I got Minnesota as the 3 seed and winning the North at 12-4. I actually have Green Bay finishing second at 10-6. I think they're going to miss out because of key losses to teams in the NFC. Specifically, I think the loss to the Rams is going to hurt them. Well, not hurt them because they're not going to be in contention, but it's an NFC loss. So I just think that Green Bay is going to end up just eking themselves out of the postseason, not because they didn't have a good year, but because they didn't have enough wins. And I'm sorry, the most I will ever give a single quarterback the most I'll ever give a quarterback for single-handed wins is 5. And when I look at their schedule, I could find 5 other wins that are non-Aaron Rodgers factor, but I can't find more than that. So I got them going 10-6. I got Detroit wrapping up the division at 7-9, or not wrapping up the division, but finishing third in the division at 7-9, just barely. And I do think, for the record, Matt Patricia can turn this thing around in Detroit, but they've got a lot of work to do in getting this thing done mentally and physically right. And I know you're not high on this team, but I got the Chicago Bears going 7-9 as well. I think with 2 extra, I told you, Trubisky could win 2 games for them right now. I think he's that good. If he has that performance, you could see the Bears at 9-7 and challenging Green Bay for the number 2 spot. But either way, 10-6 isn't going to be enough to get you in unless you have a tiebreak over the Giants, which I don't see anybody having. So I've got Green Bay, Detroit, and then Chicago, and I got Detroit and Chicago with the same record. Your turn.
Again, damn it for having the same order and standings as you. Jesus. Seriously. Whatever. Anyways. The Vikings are going to benefit from Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins loves the deep ball. And the one who's really going to take full advantage of that is Stephon Diggs. Now they're getting Dalvin Cook back as well, and he was lost to a torn ACL. To me, he's kind of hindered a little bit over what the Vikings wanted to do last year, but I mean, obviously they still went to the championship game. However, that's the NFC Championship game. I don't want anybody getting confused there. So, I can see the Vikings winning the division at 11-5. Green Bay, they have some holes. They're getting older. Word out of Green Bay is that Aaron Rodgers is not too thrilled about the contract situation. He thought he might have had it wrapped up before camp starts, as Matt Ryan basically set a new precedent for how quarterbacks are paid. But Aaron Rodgers is still now back in camp without a deal. So, do I think that really affects him? Right now, maybe yes. As far as in the season goes, I think his concentration is too much on the field stuff. And the contract situation will work itself out. But when it's hanging over your head, everybody's going to ask you every time the media gets a chance to ask a question, Aaron Rodgers, what's contract situation like? Are you going to get a deal on it? And that's going to weigh up. The Packers do have a couple of capable backups. The running game, they still need to find a running back. They got Jimmy Graham in the offseason, and they said goodbye to Jordy Nelson. So Devontae Adams is going to look to step up. So I think the Packers finish 10-6, and they sneak into one of the wild card spots. Next is the Lions. I think they hover around 8, 9, and 7. And then the Bears. The Bears are, who knows what to expect from the Bears. they did a lot in the offseason. I mean, a lot of people want to say they won the offseason, but the offseason doesn't win you a trophy. But the addition of Allen Robinson, the addition of Taylor Gabriel, the addition of Trey Burton, picking Roquan Smith, James Daniels, and Anthony Miller, who I think has a real chance to win Rookie of the Year this year, if he contributes, especially right away in that offense. They are a team that can go anywhere from 4-12 to 8-8. So I'm going to go right in the middle and say they go 6-10.
Okay.
To me, that's a disappointing year. But this is year 2 of Mitch Trubisky, and I think only good things are coming for Trubisky and the Bears. I think, especially in Trubisky's year 3, I think you're going to see a major jump.
Yeah.
But for right now, the Bears 6-10, and 6-10 pretty much is the back half of the top 10 in the first round, maybe like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Depending on how bad other teams are, but they can still get a really good impact player at that spot in the draft. So that's what I have as the NFC North.
Well, I want to say one thing about the Vikings. When you add Sheldon Richardson, and one thing I think the player that's going to benefit the most from Kirk Cousins is actually going to be Thielen. Because Diggs has got the deep ball, Rudolph's got the underneath ball, but that intermediate is really where the Redskins struggled last year, even with Case Keenum. And they really utilized Thielen and Rudolph as those underneath guys. Now they can utilize Dalvin Cook and Rudolph for those underneath routes and really get Thielen where he's most dangerous. Just ask the Rams in that intermediate range. The Vikings are going to be a real dangerous team. And if the Rams don't win as many games as I think they are, if they end up tied with the Vikings are going to be in a round ahead of them, because the Vikings are going to beat the Rams on Thursday night. I'm sorry to say, but that's just the way it always seems to go for us. All right. The AFC South, or NFC South. I'm going to be kind of really backwards here in my thinking, but bear with me. The loss of Ingram is going to hurt the Saints. They're going to be fine the first 2 weeks with Tampa Bay and Cleveland, but being at Atlanta and at New York without Ingram is going to hurt, and they're going to lose both of those games. I really believe that. And that right there is why they don't go 11-5. The rest of the season, I think, breaks in their favor. I've got Atlanta as the 4 seed winning the division at 11-5, mainly because I do think the Julio Jones contract did get worked out. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But then you add the fact that they, Justin Bethel is a really good corner that they got from the Cardinals. Then they got Fusco, the guard from the 49ers, who really played well last year. But you've got Julio and Ridley and those running backs with that quarterback, and the defense is better. I got Atlanta going 11-5 and winning the division. New Orleans is second at 9-7 and just barely eking out because of the Ingram suspension. That's the downside. Carolina, to me, this is them. Playoffs, no playoffs. Playoffs, no playoffs. Well, this is the no playoff year. I got Carolina going 8-8. They're just too inconsistent, and I didn't like enough of their additions. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of Torrey Smith. I'm not a fan of, what was the other one that I was looking at that I'm like, really? Oh, they're making a big deal about DeAndre Poe. When somebody gives up on somebody in your division who had a mediocre to okay year when their career is usually pretty good, it's a good method to stay away from that player, because if their team within your division who knows them best is willing to give up on them, they very rarely turn into something better. So, bold move by Carolina, and maybe that'll pay off, but I don't think so. And then last in the division, rounding out the back end, the Dirk Cotter coached Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a team that everyone keeps telling me is talented. And then I look at their roster and I'm like, well, not really. No, not really. No, I mean, Jason Pierre-Paul. He was talented 4 years ago. Vinny Curry from Philadelphia. He was a guy that came in as a part of a bigger package. As an independent standalone player, yeah, I don't think he's going to carry you to the playoffs. Ryan Jansen from Baltimore, that guy was good when he was a Redskin, forget a Raven. Chandler Catanzaro, the guy that can't make kicks. You replace one guy that can't kick field goals with another guy that can't kick field goals or extra points. The only one on here that I'm even remotely think is a decent one is the guy from Chicago. I like their draft picks. I got the Bucs going 6-10. You.
All right. Well, my perspective, the AFC South isn't strong. It's just the way I see it. I could be completely wrong. But one thing I am looking forward to, and I want to throw out a salute here now. Hopefully he doesn't get injured, because that would be the worst thing that I could ever see happening to anybody. But Drew Brees is about to pass Peyton Manning close to the end of October in passing yards, and I'm looking forward to seeing Drew Brees do that. I don't think the Saints are going to miss Mark Ingram as much as you think. I think the Saints have found a new way to win football games without having to rely on Drew Brees. But I think you do see Drew Brees go back over the 30 touchdown mark. He only had 23 last year because they ran the ball. They ran the ball. They had a two-headed monster. And I think for the first 4 games, you're going to see the old Drew Brees come back. That doesn't mean that that's going to take away anything from Alvin Kamara, because he is a stud. And I think Brees and Kamara are going to be difference makers for that team. Now, their defense still needs work. Help me out here, Anthony. Who's the rookie corner from last year that they had?
Latimer.
Yes, Marcus Lattimore.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Don't throw to his side. Just whatever you do, don't throw to his side, because it's not going to end well for you. So Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, and Fitzpatrick and Winston, take notes. So I have the Saints winning the division at 11-5, coming in at 10-6 and winning the other wild card are the Falcons. I think without even doing anything.
Hold on, Eric. Hold on. You've got Dallas, Green Bay, and Atlanta winning wild cards. You have to take one out.
Everybody wins a wild card. It's participation trophy year.
Yeah, I know we've gotten to another level of retarded, but no, not okay.
All right. Take Dallas out. I'm putting Atlanta in.
All right.
And I might take Atlanta out for another team, so stay tuned. So Atlanta wins the second wild card. Listen, the second wild card is up for grabs. It could really be any of 3 or 4 teams, to be honest with you. Well, I'm just going to go for Atlanta for now. They hit a home run in the draft without even having to do much. Calvin Ridley fell to them. And they're like, hey, run this card up there. Call his name out right now. The Julio Jones situation, you touched on it a little bit during when you talked about Atlanta. They have reworked his deal to where he's getting more money this year. And Julio Jones has reported to camp as of today.
Yep, that's what I thought. I heard that.
That's a weight lifted off Falcons fans and the Falcons front office and Falcons players' shoulders. So he'll be happy to get back to work. Coming up third, the Panthers. The whole Panthers sale, I think, is going to take a little bit of toll on everybody. I don't know. For some reason, you buy a team, the team doesn't do well in its first year. I mean, they're not the New York Yankees. Let me just put it like that.
Yeah.
So, Cam, yeah, you're exciting to watch. You run the ball like a running back. You can throw the ball better. You don't have Benjamin. You only have Funchess and Olsen. And I think McCaffrey has a big year in him this year. He's coming into camp winning a little bit more. I just don't see them. I see them pulling up about 9-7-ish, 8-8. And that brings us to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who bring up the rear. Jameis Winston isn't playing the first 3 games. And it's funny because I read today that Dirk Cutter isn't even considering him yet for game number 4 of the season against the Bears.
Wow.
And that would mean Fitzpatrick gets the first 3 starts. He may even get 4 starts. I mean, if Tampa Bay starts out good, which I don't see happening, because the all-time Ivy League leader in interceptions is going to be starting football games for them.
Yep.
So Tampa Bay brings up the rear. I can see them about 5-11, 6-10 as well. I just don't think it's their year, and I could see. I know you mentioned Gruden could be being let go, but I could see more Cutter than Gruden right now.
Oh, Dirk Cotter's gone at the end of this year. It's Cotter, Gruden. There's going to be a handful of guys that are cut loose. All right, finally the NFC West. It's a no-brainer. We talked about this. I'll be doing a show predicting the Rams' wins and losses here pretty soon. But I've got the Rams going 13-3. Maybe we already did a show like that, but I'm going to do another one anyway because I want to, and I don't care. So if I've done that, let me know, and we'll see if it's as consistent as it was before. But at any rate, I got the Rams going 13-3 and actually winning the number 1 seed and having home field advantage throughout. I've got the 49ers right now could either be 7-9 or 9-7. I'm calling it the Garoppolo effect. Depending on how good Garoppolo is. If he's as good as everyone says he is, he'll single-handedly find 2 wins and get the 49ers to 9-7. I think he is, and I think he will, and I got the 49ers at number 2. Look, with the Rams, it's simple. When you've got a front 7, a front 4 the way they do, you can protect the back 3. When you've got a back 4 that the Rams have, you can protect the front 3, especially when you sandwich those weakened linebackers. And I'm sorry, but Corey Littleton is going to surprise a lot of people this year. Abikuam, Micah Kaiser, I just messed up his name. Yeah, I was right, Micah Kaiser. These guys are going to be a surprising unit for the Rams. I really believe that. But they're protected. Offensively, this thing is just going to keep on rolling. And I mean rolling offensively. And now that you've got somebody that can actually take the top off and you can go deep to another guy. What I like about Robert Woods is he's a chameleon. He can go deep. He can go underneath. He can do either thing. Cooper Kupp, he's that John Taylor type that can take a slant, 92 yards for a touchdown. The tight ends do have to step up, but they have time to grow. When I look at the 49ers, there's a lot of things about the Niners that I like besides Garoppolo. I like the McKinnon pickup. I like the McGlinchey draft pick. I like the Richard Sherman signing. It gives him something to play for one more time. I just think that the 49ers need to get more going. And I think the sweep to the Rams is really going to hurt. Or by the Rams, I think if they do get swept by the Rams, it's really going to hurt them. I got them going 9-7. Seattle is done. They're talking about putting Chandler on the PUP list. I don't know if that's permanent for the entire year or not. He's done. The Seahawks are done. The Legion of Boom is now.
Did you say Chancellor?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, he's officially.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say Chancellor is officially on the PUP, missing all of 2018.
Yeah. So the Legion of Boom is now the Legion of where'd they go? They're all gone. Poof. It's the Legion of Poof. That's what they are. And then bringing up the rear in what I think is going to be actually kind of funny to watch. I'll just go ahead and say it right now. Now, on the clock for the 2018 or 19 NFL draft, the Arizona Cardinals are now on the clock. I got the Cardinals going 2-14 in the division in overall. They are going to be the laughing stock of football this year if Cleveland doesn't outdo them. Your turn.
Wow! I didn't see you doing that for the Cardinals this year. Wow.
They're a joke.
Okay, so anyways, we'll start with the Rams. They win the division rather easily. I actually like 14-2 better than 13-3.
Nice.
I think they're for real. I think this is why Snead is signing everybody. Gurley, Cooks, and soon it's going to be Aaron Donald. I really do think Donald will get signed. So I think it's going to be a fun year for LA Rams fans.
Definitely.
But your second loss will be against the Bears, so don't worry about that. You'll be all right. Coming up in second is going to be the Niners. They're ready to take the lead. It's funny. The Rams get good, and the 49ers aren't too far behind.
Nope.
It just seems like when the Rams get good, the 49ers get good. When the 49ers get good, the Rams have not been the best, but they always play the 49ers tough. And I think you're going to see, the 49ers and Rams, two good teams, are going to duke it out for many years, as long as Goff and Garoppolo and Gurley and your young players stay healthy. It's going to be a crazy AFC West ride.
You got the Niners making the wild card?
They're one of the 4 teams that I can consider making the wild card.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
No, not this year. I think they're a year
you're away from a wild card spot, not the division, but a wild card spot. Seattle's in a world of hurt. Who knows what's going to go on with Earl Thomas? He has yet to report to camp. He really needs to get in there or get traded or a new contract if, depending on what Seattle's going to do. If he's smart, he'll try to trade him. Or he'll want to be traded because Seattle's a dumpster fire right now.
Yeah.
I could see them 5-11. And then the Cardinals, when you got Bradford and Glennon as your first two quarterbacks, and then Rosen as your third, and Atos Wonder and Larry Fitzgerald, I hate to see him go out on a bad team like that. He doesn't deserve that. But he epitomizes what an Arizona Cardinal is. He has been so fun to watch over his career.
Yeah.
Seriously, an amazing talent. I loved when him and Bolden were out there in the desert and
that was fun.
Passes from Kurt Warner.
That was fun.
And they were just lighting it up. They were fun guys to watch. They were fun in fantasy to have. And Larry Fitzgerald, he's a true class act. The NFL is really going to miss a guy like that when he decides to hang him up.
Yeah.
They're going to be a 3-13, 4-12 team. And until Rosen takes over, there's no hope with what goes on out there this year for them to even sniff the playoffs. So.
Well, let me give the fans a little bit of hope here in the sense that Chuck Noll went 1-11 or 1-13, 1-11, 1-11 or 1-13 his first year coaching in Pittsburgh. Jimmy Johnson went 1-15 his first year in Dallas. Having a really bad year and having a lot of draft picks in year two of your coaching career isn't necessarily a death knell for Wilks. It might be preferred. I'm not saying the Cardinals are going to throw games, but I don't think the Cardinals are going to try particularly hard to win games at the end of the year when they're sitting there going, damn, we have a real shot at the number one overall pick. Let's do this, provided the number one overall pick is worth getting. Going to the playoffs, I've got the Giants as the...
Here, let me do this. Let me do my playoffs first, and then I got to get rolling, like I mentioned.
You got it.
The Rams with the 1 seed, Philly with the 2 seed, Vikings 3, and New Orleans 4. Wild cards are Green Bay and Atlanta. Atlanta goes to who do I have as my 3 seed? Atlanta goes to Minnesota. Oh, surprise, surprise! A rematch of
98.
The rematch of last year.
98. Yeah.
And then Green Bay goes to. Trying to do this on a whim here.
New Orleans.
Green Bay goes to New Orleans. Well, Atlanta and Green Bay lose. I can't let Green Bay go that far. So that's just personal and whatnot. But they get destroyed in the wild card round by the Saints. Let's see. That would mean that the Saints go to
LA.
And the Vikings go to Philly. Jeez. The Vikings beat Philly.
They exercise demons.
The Vikings beat Philly, and the Rams beat New Orleans.
Dude, you're giving me a heart attack. The one team I don't want to play in a championship game.
The one team you don't want to face in the NFC Championship game, you get it. So I'll flip a coin. Okay, so which one gets to face Jacksonville?
Well, you know who I'm going to pick.
I know who you're going to pick. Interesting. Well, I guess I can't leave on a nail biter, but I might as well just go Rams and say Rams versus Jacksonville in the Super Bowl.
Actually, Eric, I don't think we're that far off. All right, buddy, listen, I'll let you go. You can tune in later when I post it.
Will do.
All right,
bye.
bye. See you, Eric. Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, that's funny. My playoffs don't break down all that dissimilar. I've got the Giants at the Minnesota Vikings in what I think is going to be a really fun game to watch, but Barkley isn't going to be able to run against that defense, and Eli Manning, as good of a quarterback as I believe he is up there in age, and he's going to have a really hard time getting through all those corners. I got the Vikings handling the Giants in I almost called it the Metrodome. Whatever their new stadium's called. The Dallas Cowboys go to the Atlanta Falcons. A little bit of a revenge game for Dallas for last year's Sack Fest in Atlanta. Also played in Atlanta. And I've got the Cowboys having too much. I just think that the Atlanta Falcons are going to have some difficulty stopping Ezekiel Elliott. They're going to have some difficulty figuring out what the Cowboys exactly are going to approach with. I've got Dallas narrowly beating the Atlanta Falcons and advancing to the divisional playoff game. Now, the divisional round, I've got Dallas at LA. We got this. Dallas is too one-dimensional, and with the defense that we're going to have, we are going to handle our business really, really well there, and nothing sweeter than beating the Cowboys. So the Rams will beat Dallas in advance of the conference championship game. I got Minnesota at Philly like Eric did, and I actually have the Eagles winning because I'm just that high on Philadelphia. And I think if it wasn't for the Rams, I think the Eagles would probably repeat. I got Philly beating Minnesota, maybe in overtime. Certainly going to be a lot closer than last year's championship game. That means the NFC Championship game is Philly at LA for the second time that year. And I've got the Rams for the second time that year beating Philly, which is tough to do. But I think the Rams just have a lot of talent on offense and can pull that off. So I've got the Rams beating Philadelphia and advancing to the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowl, I've got the Rams beating the Jaguars for two simple factors. I think special teams is going to play a part in this. I don't think the Rams are going to be as porous against the run as they were last year. And I don't think that the Rams are going to allow for Blake Bortles to throw all over the place. I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to have a really hard time stopping Gurley and that multi-dimensional offense. But all of you that doubt me, when I said Pharoh Cooper should start over Tavon Austin, and look at the year that he had as a return man, I think he's going to be the factor in that game. He may be another Desmond Howard. He may turn around and win a Super Bowl MVP as a return specialist because I think he can gash the Jacksonville Jaguar punt team and their kickoff team. Heck, he did it last year. And it's not like you improve that position very much from year to year. You've either got the coaching that can do it or you don't. Jacksonville's got a pretty good coach, but the Rams special teams coach is way better, and I think they have better talent to put in those positions, and I think that's going to be the difference. If you want me to give you a score, I'll say Rams 38, Jaguars 24. I think it's going to be that kind of game. Although I think the defense might be disappointed with 24 points. We will have to wait and see. So that's the prediction show. Now, I've been debating on what I was going to do here. So one of my fans wanted me to cover the 1960s, which I know he said was a really good decade. And it was. It didn't start off great, but it ended great. So there's a couple things here that I'm going to entrust myself with to make sure that I get this right. And that is a book that I've used in the past. Not that I need it, but I just want to make sure I get records correct. Records is what I'm concerned about, not necessarily anything else. So, for me, the futility of the first 5 years of the decade of the 1960s begins and ends with the 9-man trade to the Cardinals. They may have been the St. Louis Cardinals by then. I'm going to look. Yeah, they were the Chicago Cardinals still. The Rams traded 9 players in what was the biggest blockbuster trade in the history of football at the time. And they traded 9 players to the Cardinals for running back Ollie Matson. Not exactly Sid Gillman's finest hour as a coach. When you look at the team, it's a little understandable why he did that. Sid Gillman had been with the Rams since Hampton Poole left the organization in 1954. Sid Gillman led the team to an NFL championship game in 55 at 8-3. He had a down year in 56 and 57, but 58 they were 8-4, and he thought he was really close. He thought he was a running back away from really turning that notch, and he really liked what he saw from the back in Chicago and Ollie Matson. So he trades all these people. decimates the organization. They end up going 2-10. Sid Gilman gets fired, and the Rams, Ollie Matson doesn't lead the team in rushing ever again after 1959. And it should be noted that Ollie Matson is out as a Ram player by 1962. In 1960, the Rams hired Bob Waterfield, a former Ram, to be their head coach. Thought was, he knows the organization, he can come in, he could do some things, and he's going to provide an element of the passing game. The problem with Bob Waterfield is he was a little too into the passing game. The Rams had a really, really good running back. And guys, I really encourage you to go back and look at film if you can on YouTube of John Arnett. One of the best backs we ever had that we didn't use enough. We also had Dick Bass by 1961. But we never had a running back top 700 yards under Bob Waterfield. We just didn't. It was a one-dimensional offense. We had 800-yard receivers all over the place, which if you guys don't know back then, guys, they really only played 14 games. And if you had an 800-yard receiver, that's equivalent to having a 1,000-yard receiver today. Okay? So today we have the 1,000-yard club, right? As a wide receiver, that's the mark that if you hit that, you had a pretty good year. Back then it was 800. And every single year under Gilman, they had an 800-yard receiver. Heck, they even had a 1,000-yard receiver in Phillips in 1961. And why don't I know his name? I do not know Phillips' first name. It's the first 1,000-yard receiver in team history. I feel like an inadequate fan right now. At any rate, 1960, the Rams go 4-7-1. 1961, they go 4-10. 1962, they get off to a horrendous start. Under Bob Waterfield. I believe they were 1-7. Is that right? They were 1-7 under Bob Waterfield. It was horrible. They fired him mid-season. They bring in this guy, Harlan Svare. I don't even know how to say his name. It's Svare. They don't win any games. They tie one. Dick Bass does rush for over 1,000 yards. Arnett widely gets ignored as a ball carrier. But then 1963, they bring this guy back. I don't know why. And the Rams, they don't do as well either. They kind of have a really down year. They go 5-9. 64, they go 5-7-2. 65, they go 4-10. They end up firing this guy. There's a couple things that happen here, though, for the Rams, and I want to make this important. The couple things that happen here for the Rams is they start to draft players on defense. They start to create this momentum. None of the fearsome foursome are drafted until 1961, I believe. Yeah, I was right. 1961, the Rams get Deacon Jones, Lamar Lundy, and they start the process. They get Olson in 1962, and they trade for Rosie Greer by 1963. So what ends up happening is they have this fearsome foursome, and ownership's like, hey, wait a minute. How is it that we're winning these? We have all this talent on defense. Deacon Jones sacking people like a madman. Merlin Olsen stuffing the run. Rosie Greer manning the inside. Lamar Lundy. Rosie Greer handling the outside. Why are we not it was really frustrating. So they fire this coach because they realize they're all defense and no offense. And they bring in a guy in George Allen to be their head coach. And he's hired in 1966. And George Allen, for a lot of us, is one of our favorite coaches. Unfortunately, what he learned in LA, he brought with him to Washington. And here's why I say this, guys. you need to have youth on your team. But because he had such a veteran-laden team that was hungry to win with guys that didn't have a lot of experience, he thought he had the answer to the age-old question, how do you win? And he starts ignoring rookies. I remind you, we drafted Deacon Jones. We drafted Merlin Olsen. We drafted Lamar Lundy. But George Allen comes in post facto. It's not a knock on George Allen. He picked this demeanor up. Well, immediately in 1966, the Rams find success. Under George Allen, they have the first winning season since 1958 at 8-6. And people are really excited. 1967 for me is, if you guys have ever seen my top 10 Ram teams of all time, you should go back on my LA Rams Central channel and find it. It's really a great show, and I've got this 67 team on there, and I go into detail on this team. But the 67 team had their struggles early, and then they just mowed the field. I mean, they won every single game from October 29th to December 17th. And in many of those games, it wasn't even close. In fact, in all of those games, it wasn't even close. 10 points or more in every single game. They dominated. Everyone thought they were the best team. And along the way, one game was close. Along the way, they beat the Green Bay Packers 27-24. And that game was actually played in LA. Now, the cool thing about that game is the Packers have a 24-20 lead in the fourth quarter with about 7 or 8 minutes to go in the game. The Rams come crashing through the line, block a punt, pick it up, and return it for a touchdown to go up 27-24. I believe in that game they had 3 defensive touchdowns and 2 field goals. They counted special teams touchdowns as a defensive touchdown back then. But the Rams blocked 2 kicks. One of them they returned for a touchdown. Another one set up a field goal. Might have been 3 kicks. 2 set up field goals. 1 they returned for a touchdown. It was a huge upset. And the Green Bay Packers, they defeated the Green Bay Packers. And people were like, oh, what is going on here? Like, that got everyone's attention. So George Allen and the Rams go 11-1-2 that year. And everybody, and by the way, that 1-2 happened 3 straight weeks in a row. They lose to the 49ers. I don't want to talk about it. 27-24. They tie the Colts and they tie the Redskins. And then they won their first 3 games. Then they had that 3-game stretch where they were 3-1-2. And then they ran the table and finished 11-1-2. No overtime back then. That's why so many ties. In the playoffs against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau, the Rams let's call a spade, okay? They were brought back to reality. That regular season football is not postseason football, and what the Packers play is postseason football. They pounded the Rams in Lambeau, 28-7. But back then they had this thing called the Playoff Bowl for the teams that lost in the playoffs. They got one more chance to play while the NFC was doing their championship game. I know it's kind of weird to me, but it is kind of cool because the Rams have never lost a playoff bowl. They're 2-0. And they beat the Browns that year in the playoff bowl 30-6. It was played at the site of the Super Bowl, in this case Miami, actually. So it was kind of neat. They got to go play the playoff bowl in Miami. It's weird that they did it that way, but they did, and that's who the Rams beat. So the Rams actually do get a playoff win. It doesn't count. I don't count it towards their playoff record. It's just kind of a fun thing that I think it's stupid, but it's weird. I don't know. It's geeky. But 1968 drives me crazy. 1968, we go 10-3-1. And realistically, our 20-20 tie to the 49ers is why we don't make the playoffs. Well, that's not true. That's not true. The reason 68 drives me crazy is because Colts that year went 13-1, and they were in our division. And back then, you won your division, you got to the postseason. So you had 4 divisions back then. You had the Coastal Division, which is what the Rams were in. Don't ask me why the Colts were in the Coastal Division as the Baltimore Colts and the Rams were in the Los Angeles area. But I digress. You had the East, you had the Central, you had the Coastal, and I forget what they called the other division, but there were 4 divisions. And the Rams at 10-3-1, it was one of those, they had such a great year, but really and the worst part is they started off really, really, really good. They would start off 6-0. And then they lost to Baltimore, won 2 games, tied the 49ers. I guess, actually, no, they weren't out of it. They had a chance on 2 separate occasions to catch the Colts. They lost to them. That was their first loss of the season, badly. 27-10. And trust me, guys, you lose by 10 points back then or more, that's kind of a tail whipping. But the final game of the regular season, they had an opportunity to get Baltimore to be 12-2, and the Rams would have been 11-2, which still would have given Baltimore the division because the idiots lose to Chicago the week before at home to the Bears by 1 point, and the Bears were bad back then. 17-16 loss of the Bears eliminates the Rams in the postseason. This is why I hate playing the Bears. But they still give it a go, and they lose. But 1969 is really the year for me, and probably for you, the one that recommended this, that's probably the most memorable. Now, George Allen and the Rams are just killing it. They start off the season 11-0. And in week 12, they played the 10-1 Vikings. It was I think it was the first time ever 2 teams with 10 wins or more played each other in the regular season. And it was a really fun game in LA, but the Vikings, as usual, get the best of us and beat us 20-13. But it starts like, I'm going to throw something out there for no one's going to know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to say it anyway. In 1986, the New York Jets were 10-1. They got off to a 10-1 start. They lost 5 straight games, made the playoffs, somehow beat Kansas City, and then lost to Cleveland in the divisional playoff game. This was the Rams New York Jets moment. They were the first to do it. They get off to an 11-0 start, and they lose to Minnesota, and they lose to Detroit 28-0. Then they lose to Baltimore, and then in the playoffs, they go to Minnesota, and they felt pretty confident like they could win. The Fearsome Foursome, by the way, this year got broken up because of an injury to Rosie Greer and Lamar Lundy, and I believe one of them was in the preseason and was lost for the year, which really hurt the Rams. Actually, it might have just been one of them at that point. They might have been broken up by then, I'm not sure. But either way, it hurt. And the Rams that year, though, they had such a strong finish, or beginning, and had such a whimper finish. The Minnesota Vikings, that game, that was tough. The Rams had their opportunities to win the game. A safety is what gave the Vikings ultimately the 3-point edge. They were only up by 1 at the time. It might have been up by more than that. But the bottom line is they lose the game. And it's a close one, unlike the last time. So people going into the 70s were like, hey, the 60s with George Allen, they're going really well. You know, we've got this momentum and you know, we're really moving forward. And, you know, we learned from the playoff loss to Green Bay and look how much better we were here. And a lot of people were excited about the Rams. The problem is they missed their window. Fearsome Foursome had gotten older. Roman Gabriel was kind of winding down his talents. And there's so much I could talk about in this era. I mean, you had Roman Gabriel. I talked about Dick Bass already. You know, Jack Snow. How could I forget Jack Snow, our wide receiver? So much talent. And that's really been the frustration, I think, for Ram fans. We have always, and that's why this year I'm cautiously optimistic. Because I cannot tell you how many years we've gone into a season, on paper, the most talented team in football, and ended up with a 3-point postseason loss. Or ended up with 6 fumbles against the Washington Redskins, and, well, we weren't the most talented team in '86, but certainly been our track record throughout our history. So the 60s is really the tale of 2 decades. You've got the first half of the decade, which just begins with utter and total futility in 1959. And then it just kind of, you know, they build accidentally on the defensive side of the ball, really from 62 to 64. 65, and then they bring in George Allen. And again, what a difference a coach makes. He turns that corner and gets the Rams to go to a higher plane, but not high enough. Made him a competitor, but didn't make him a champion. What I have left to cover is the 40s, actually technically the 30s, 30s, the 40s, the 50s, 90s. I told you when I'm going to do the aughts, or I'm going to choose when I do the aughts. And obviously the teens, which we're in. So you guys comment below on which one you want to hear next. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. Hopefully my predictions do better than last year. For those of you that don't like my predictions, just remember last year I couldn't have been any more wrong on most of them, like the Patriots. So it is what it is. It's just one man's idea and what I think could happen based on how I see the teams drafting and moving in free agency. Time will tell. Anyway, that's it. It's me. I'm Anthony for LA Rams Central, and go Rams!